Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Liz, aka My Pastel Past, and I'm back with another video. Although this time, it's not a speed build, it's a custom design. Now, I originally was working on this custom design live on stream on Sunday, and I realized that I made some errors. So huge thank you to everyone that was trying to help me out in chat, and to those individuals I spoke with off stream that gave me some tips. So I'm ready to recreate this design with you all and kind of share what I learned. So first thing that I was told to adjust was how I was highlighting and shading the stone tile. Now, what I never realized that I needed to do before was to add a lighter color in the top left and to contrast the dark color that I had in the bottom right. This just kind of gives the tile more dynamic, I guess, and also adds to that light contrast I was doing before. Also, in terms of shading, what I'm doing now is I'm adding texture instead of focusing on creating blocky color patches that would represent the different areas of light on the tiles. This also does add shading, but it adds the texture that most stone tiles need and have when they're looked at when they're on the ground. Before, what I was doing was I was just clumping colors together, kind of the way I would for a wood path of sorts, but with tiles and with stone, it's a little bit more granulated, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Almost like gravel. So by adding these little dots of colors here and there, it does add the shadowy effect that I'm looking for, especially by making it more dense in the bottom right corner and having those dots less sparse and spread out more in the top left corner. It adds the shading that I needed, but also the texture effect. Another really important thing that I learned while creating this design was the colors I was using in particular. Before, I was using very contrasting colors, very light and very dark, and it kind of created these harsher lines, but a very special person was telling me afterwards that instead I should follow two lighter and two darker shades. So I have the lightest shade being the highlight, followed by the second lightest shade being what I'm doing now, just adding a highlight to it in terms of texture, and then I have two darker shades for texture on the bottom. Now that I have the overall texture done, I'm creating a second copy. That way, if I make a mistake, I can always go back to the original design. For this tile in particular, I really wanted to have some vines covering it and some gorgeous blue flowers that have kind of overgrown a little bit. I also learned of a new tool while I was creating these designs, so thank you to chat for letting me know, and that was that I can use that little arrow button to kind of move the overall shape of what I was creating. I had no idea that was a thing, so it's super cool. Now I'm just kind of adding in some flowers. It took me forever to kind of figure out how to make flowers in Animal Crossing, specifically for custom designs, because it blew my mind. I could not figure it out at first, but eventually I learned what I was doing wrong and I fixed it. This is my first attempt at flowers, figuring out the colors, where I wanted to do and where I wanted to place things. I didn't want to overflow it as much originally. I do go back and change that later. And I also tried to add some highlights or contrast to the green to create leaves. And now I'm just kind of creating texture around the edges. This is something that I do change later on, just because I really wasn't happy with how the flowers looked at the end, and I'm keeping it in the video just in case if this was a different kind of style that you were going for, you can possibly learn from it. Another thing that I learned that I will bring up later on in terms of roughing up the edges was how to shade those, because I really didn't understand how to do them originally. And that was just kind of making sure that where I was placing the different shading colors, it wasn't too dark and it wasn't taking away from the piece itself. Here is where I kind of realized that I made a mistake in my flowers, so I went back and I decided to adjust the color of the tile first to make it lighter because it was a little bit too dark for my taste. And I also adjust how the flowers look. I do reference the original tiles that I made, which were these ones, because I liked how the flowers and the vines turned out on that. So I tried to recreate it again on the original design that I had. This is why I like making copies of my designs. That way when I'm messing around with different styles or aspects that I want to add and change with it, it's not overpowering and I don't need to start from scratch again, because at least for me personally, when I make mistakes or I mess things up, it's super frustrating to have to try to figure out how to overlap the colors and go back, because unfortunately there's no undo button. At least not that I know of. If you are aware that there is an undo button in custom designs, please let me know, because I've been going far too long assuming that there is none. But with these flowers, I kind of wanted to do something that reminded me of the lily of the valley, only I didn't want it to be in white. I really wanted it to be in blue, just to kind of carry in that color, because it's been my overall color theme for the entire island. So I just have these vines kind of snaking around, taking over the sides of the stones. I tried to keep the center a little bit more open. When I was originally doing this design on stream, I tried to fill in the space by adding extra leaves and flowers all over the place, and in the end it took away too much from the stone itself, and then it just looked like an overgrown mess of just leaves and flowers. So I really tried to leave the vines and the flowers itself to the edges in particular. Another thing that I was really trying to do was to make it look more natural and not overly curved. There are some areas where it is very curved, but I didn't want it to look like just a candy cane of sorts. And looking back at it, I do realize that the bottom left does kind of look like a candy cane, but at the same time, that is what the lily of the valley kind of looks like, so I guess it's okay. I also went in with a darker shade of green just to add a little bit more contrast. And here I am again, roughing up the edges of the tile just to make it look a little bit more worn and kind of walked on, because for my island, people would be walking, moving chairs on top of these tiles all the time. Now, what I meant in terms of shading is I was trying to focus shading on a particular color, that being the second to darkest color, and always keeping it to the back right. That way it doesn't look like a gaping hole in the middle of my tile, if that makes sense. Here I am just placing it on the ground overall to kind of see how it looks like all together, and I am absolutely in love. I did, however, go back later and adjust the color of the vines, so you'll see in a moment here, I do change it slightly. I don't show that in this video, but if you look at it now, the vine color is slightly darker. I did that just because on top of grass in particular, the green vines were kind of blending in with the blue flowers, and I wasn't a huge fan of that, so I went back and changed it. That is the end for my quote-unquote tutorial, I guess, for how I did this code. I hope you all enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something along with me. Leave a comment telling me what you think, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye!